Breaking. Just hours ago, something happened live on international television that has sent shockwaves from Jerusalem to London. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a message so direct, so unexpected, that even Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer was left completely frozen. Live, in front of cameras. The clip has now been replayed millions of times, and reactions across Britain are nothing short of explosive. It began at what was supposed to be a routine joint press conference, a diplomatic handshake, a few polite words about partnership and mutual respect. But Netanyahu, known for his composure and precision, decided this time would be different. Halfway through the event, as journalists waited for the usual soundbites, Netanyahu suddenly shifted his tone. Leaning slightly toward the microphone, his expression hardened. "We value our allies," he began slowly, "but friendship cannot be built on duplicity. If London continues on this path, it will lose more than just credibility. It will lose Israel's trust." The room went silent. Starmer's smile faltered. Aides shifted nervously. This wasn't the script anyone expected. Reporters immediately sensed the tension. Something had broken through the polite facade of diplomacy. Within seconds, social media exploded with clips of Netanyahu's remarks. Orja Netanyahu's Starmer, UK-Israel crisis, and Britain reacts began trending globally within an hour. But what triggered such a pointed rebuke from Israel's leader? According to multiple diplomatic insiders, Netanyahu's words were a direct response to Starmer's recent foreign policy statement, in which the UK Prime Minister had quietly suggested that Israel's recent actions raised serious concerns about humanitarian oversight. It was subtle, but it was enough to enrage Israeli officials who saw it as a thinly veiled condemnation during one of the most sensitive moments in Middle Eastern politics. Netanyahu, ever the strategist, chose not to respond through a press release. He waited. Then, when the cameras were rolling and the world was watching, he struck back, live. The Israeli leader went further. "Those who question Israel's right to defend itself," he said sharply, "should first look in the mirror and ask whether their own policies reflect moral clarity or moral confusion." Starmer's face said it all. He blinked rapidly, shuffled his papers, and avoided eye contact as Netanyahu continued. The Israeli press described it as the diplomatic equivalent of a knockout punch. In Britain, commentators called it an extraordinary breach of protocol and a massive political embarrassment. But while the headlines focused on the awkward exchange, what came next made it far more serious. Hours after the event, Israeli state media released excerpts of a confidential report claiming that British officials had quietly supported a UN motion critical of Israel's recent security operations, a move London had publicly denied. The document appeared to contradict Starmer's previous statements, exposing what Netanyahu described as a pattern of quiet betrayal. And that's when the narrative flipped. This wasn't just about words anymore. It was about trust, truth, and transparency. And the British government suddenly found itself cornered. Back in London, Starmer's communications team rushed to contain the story, calling it a misunderstanding and an overreaction by Israel. But the damage was already done. News anchors replayed Netanyahu's speech on a loop. British tabloids plastered headlines like "Starmer humiliated live on air" and "Netanyahu's warning shocks Downing Street." Inside Parliament, opposition leaders demanded clarity. Did the Prime Minister mislead the nation about his stance toward Israel? One MP asked. Starmer avoided direct answers, saying only, "We continue to support peace and stability in the region." But to the public, it looked like evasion, and to many, it looked like weakness. By the end of the day, even Starmer's allies admitted privately that Netanyahu had outplayed him completely. One government insider told The Times, "Netanyahu set a trap and Starmer walked straight into it." And as night fell over London, a new reality began to set in. The relationship between the UK and Israel was now strained, fragile. and potentially fractured. But what came next would take this diplomatic clash from political theater to international crisis, and it all unfolded within 24 hours. By dawn, Britain woke up to a storm. Front pages screamed, "Netanyahu stuns Starmer live, Israel strikes back." The clip was everywhere: TikTok, YouTube, international news outlets. And what shocked everyone wasn't just the confrontation, but the aftermath. Just hours after Netanyahu's remarks, Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the temporary suspension of several trade discussions, with the UK pending re-evaluation of diplomatic transparency. In other words, Britain had been diplomatically benched. The markets reacted instantly. The pound fell. British-Israeli tech partnerships froze overnight. And the international press began framing the moment as the worst UK-Israel rift in decades. In Westminster, the mood was grim. Cabinet ministers held emergency briefings trying to minimize the damage. Starmer appeared on national television to issue a calm but defensive statement. The United Kingdom remains committed to strong relations with Israel and will continue to engage in open dialogue. But the attempt to sound composed only deepened the perception that he'd lost control of the situation. Commentators noted how visibly uncomfortable he appeared, pausing, stumbling, repeating lines from a teleprompter. Meanwhile, Netanyahu seized the global spotlight. In a follow-up interview broadcast to millions, he doubled down. Britain cannot claim to stand for truth while quietly endorsing those who seek to distort it. That line hit like a hammer. It was replayed over and over across international networks. In London, public opinion began to split sharply. Some Britons accused Netanyahu of disrespecting a democratic ally, but others, especially conservative commentators, praised him for saying what needed to be said. Social media became a battlefield. Thousands of posts praised Netanyahu's strength and clarity, while others criticized Starmer for projecting weakness on the global stage. Within 48 hours, pressure inside Downing Street reached boiling point. Anonymous leaks from within the Labour Party suggested that senior MPs were furious about how Starmer handled the entire affair. One even told The Guardian, this was supposed to be a moment of diplomacy, not disaster. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, Israel released new satellite evidence showing that British intelligence had provided logistical support to European monitoring missions, critical of Israel's actions, and further inflaming tensions. It was official. This was no longer a diplomatic disagreement. It was an international fallout. Global analysts weighed in, calling it a masterclass in Netanyahu's strategic communication. He had turned a quiet policy dispute into a global narrative, one where Israel stood firm, and Britain looked confused. By the weekend, Starmer's approval ratings had plunged. Public confidence in his foreign policy hit record lows. And in a symbolic twist, Israeli officials confirmed they would temporarily limit bilateral defense coordination until trust is restored. One BBC commentator summed it up. Netanyahu played the long game, and Starmer played into his hands. Even allies in Washington reportedly urged Starmer to exercise caution in responding further. Meanwhile, Netanyahu's approval ratings soared at home. Across Britain, the mood was tense. Protests erupted outside Parliament, some calling for Starmer's resignation, others demanding diplomatic repair. But one truth was undeniable. In less than 2 days, a single moment on live television had redefined Britain's global standing. A prime minister caught off guard. A foreign leader who refuses to play by the script. And a nation now questioning who really leads with strength on the world stage. Did Netanyahu go too far? Or did he simply reveal what others were too afraid to say? Was this political humiliation? Or a wake-up call for Britain's leadership? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked Westminster, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next diplomatic confrontation could change Britain forever. The cameras may have stopped rolling, but the fallout has only just begun.